Good morning. My name is Bruce Moylan. I'm the Risk and Compliance Manager for ECI Catering. This morning I'm here to do a quick inspection before they open of this kitchen. You know, as I begin an inspection of a kitchen, there are a number of things that first come to mind, and that's first impression. When I look around this kitchen, my perception is the manager is knowledgeable. They have a good idea of what's going on in their kitchen, and they've paid attention to the level of cleanliness and sanitation within their unit. But let's dive deeper into the operation. And as an inspector, I use a number of tools. The first is I have to have a flashlight because there are places that are not well lit that I have to look at. And in addition, I have to begin to think about the temperatures that food are maintained at, so I use an infrared thermometer that provides a quick reading of temperatures. So let's begin at the beverage station here. We have a drain, and inside that drain, I'm looking to see if there's any buildup, if indeed there's any fruit flies or drain flies or any type of insect activity. The next, I'll look at how the cups are stored. I'll look at the Coke machine and see if indeed the caps are being cleaned, if indeed the ice is coming from a sanitary source, and if it's well maintained. This appears to be doing well, and the ice is covered and protected. Now let's move to a refrigerated area. You know, as I begin my inspection, I'll look at things like display cabinets. Here we have a display cabinet that has a wide variety of single-use products. Of course, what I'm looking for is expiration dates. I'm looking at the temperature that they're being maintained at. And if there was food here, I'd be making sure that that potentially hazardous food is maintained at 40 degrees or below, a good temperature. Not frozen, but well refrigerated and in a good quality state for our customers. There's no problems here that I see. It's clean, it's sanitary, it's maintained, it's well stocked. The items appear to be in date. As I move forward in the inspection, we come to an action station where we see a number of things that we need to be inspecting. First of all, we need to be looking at the food product that is stored to see that it's fresh, wholesome, in date. And when we talk about dates, we're talking about expiration date, use by date, and sell date. And we'll explain those more in detail as we get into this training. But as an inspector, I'm going to look at the refrigerators. I'm going to make sure that the food that is inside the refrigerator is covered, that it's dated, that there's a thermometer, and that thermometer reads an appropriate temperature. But we have another piece of equipment that's very important in a kitchen, and that's the fact that we have a hand sink. So I'm going to look for paper towels, I'm going to look for soap. This particular manager has chosen to use hand sanitizer, but hand sanitizer is not a substitute for hand washing. Hand washing is one of the most important things we can do as a food service employee. I turn to one of our problematic areas. Problematic because there's grease. High temperature, grease, filtration, filters, grease buildup. Those are all important things that we have to be looking at. Grease buildup below equipment, inside the equipment. Also looking at the condition of the grease itself. Is it clear? Does it have an odor to it? Are there floaters? Has it been well maintained, and is it cleaned properly? And of course, we have to look at the service dishes themselves to see if indeed they are protected from any contamination. In this case, it would be physical contamination. You know, for this action station, there has to be a food supply. So we have a freezer here. Again, what we're looking at is to make sure that this is 32 degrees below, or 32 degrees or below Fahrenheit to maintain that temperature of the food in frozen state. As we open this, we want to look and see the same type of thing. Is the food covered, labeled? Is it in properly sealed packages? Has it been portion controlled? Does the refrigerator feel like it's cold, or the freezer? And here's another thermometer that shows a different temperature than here. One thermometer doesn't always show the same temperature as another. Temperature is important. We also want to look at the condition of the gaskets on the cooler to make sure that they're being properly maintained and are in good seals. As we continue our tour here, I come to another action station. It's obviously a sandwich or deli type of operation. First thing that I notice is that the breads are sealed. I'm looking at the dates to make sure that we have the appropriate dates and that we don't have an expired product. But I also look at the equipment that is used to make sandwiches for our customers, and I notice a little bit of food buildup here. That indeed is physical contamination, and I'd cite this particular piece of equipment for being unclear, and it might even be a serious violation or a critical violation if food was being prepared at this particular time. So this food buildup is inappropriate. This is a piece of equipment that needs to be cleaned. As I go through operations, operators sometimes tell me that I'm being too detail-oriented, and they challenge my observations, my opinions, my perceptions. My opinions, perceptions, and observations are based upon the rules and regulations of a health department. In this case, the Fort Worth, State of Texas Health Department rules and regulations that license this facility. It's important that we follow those rules, regulations, to make sure that our customers are not made sick through a foodborne illness, that we are in compliance with the rules, regulations, and the expectations of our client customers, that you are following the rules and regulations that you are aware of. We're fixing to enter the kitchen, the heart of an operation. So at this time, we're interested in our effective hair restraint. I happen to use a hair net, and I'll put that on my head to make sure that all hair is covered and that I don't have the possibility of putting hair into the food. We've talked a little bit about the tools that I use. I'll use a flashlight, an infrared thermometer, of course the STEM thermometer that all employees should have to check time and temperature. I'll use a thermocoupler, which is a little bit more accurate, and I'll also use a digital thermometer for convenience, especially on salad bars. But there's also a number of specialty thermometers that I use. This one happens to be a holding thermometer that is used to test sanitation sink and sanitation cycle in dish machines. As we enter the kitchen, what I'm looking at is a main battery of cooking equipment to include fryers, a stovetop, gas, and a grill. But I'm also looking at the fire suppression system to see if it's well maintained. Again, the vent hoods, whether or not I find grease buildup, and I'll look again at the fryers to see if indeed there's any buildup of grease. These are covered. The oil has been removed. The equipment looks clean. Here the pilot lights are working, and I look here and I find a grease product that is used. It's properly labeled, it's roux, it has a proper date. So it is okay because it's not a potentially hazardous food. I'll look at the general sanitation and cleanliness of the area, and again, look at what's maintained above a cooking surface. Continuing our audit of this kitchen, we continue in the main area of the kitchen, looking at the tilting braising pan, or sometimes called a brat pan, to make sure that it's clean on the inside, that the stainless steel has been cleaned, is wiped. It should always look like stainless steel. That pots and pans are stored appropriately. That cleaning chemicals and supplies are maintained away from food. And of course, that the drain is clean. That pots are stored without water. And again, clean on the inside. And we'll continue to look at fire suppression, hoods, and hood filters. Inside a kitchen we have a lot more than bricks and mortar. We have equipment, and that equipment, it can be old, it can be used, but it still operates. We have to make sure that that equipment is well maintained, kept clean, and in proper working order. So part of my job is to make sure that the controls, the temperatures, the equipment itself works as it should. I make sure that the equipment is clean on the outside and also clean on the inside. Then I also have to make sure that temperatures are appropriate, whether they be for cooking, for holding, for refrigeration, or for freezing. As mentioned before, you as an employee are an important part of our ability to do our job. Hand washing is very important, but also your habits, your drinking, your eating in a kitchen. So all of our kitchens have a designated drinking area where we place cups for the coffee and the beverages consumed by employees. Temperatures of walk-ins are maintained, but you as an employee also have to know how to respond if indeed there's an emergency situation. So fire extinguishers and extinguisher training is part of your training. On this side, we have a lot of ingredients that are necessary to make that quality food that we are indeed trying to make and serve to our customers. These areas are maintained cleaned. There's nothing that's out of date. It's properly covered and placed here. The racks and shelves are clean as well. As an inspector, I am dependent upon the tools that I use and making sure that they're in good condition. As a food service employee, you use tools as well. One of those most frequently used is a knife of many different types, shapes, sizes, and you have to make sure that they're well maintained, that they have a sharp blade, and that that blade is indeed maintained. But more importantly, from a safety standpoint, to make sure that it is stored properly and cannot endanger you or the employees around you. Walk-in coolers and freezers are important. And when we talk about those walk-ins, we're talking about a proper food storage order, making sure that ready-to-eat foods are stored on top, that raw seafood is stored on the next shelf, raw whole meats next, raw ground beefs finally, and raw poultry on the bottom. That's important for infection control. We're inside a cooler, and as I enter the cooler, I take a quick look around to see if indeed that produce is properly stored, that some produce that doesn't need to be covered is indeed in separate containers, that in the case of cauliflower, so that it doesn't retain the odors, is properly covered and doesn't have a lot of bad spots. I'm also looking at the boxes to see that they're dated, that food that has been started has indeed a cover on it, is properly dated, that it's maintained in a clean and sanitary state. I'm looking at labels. I'm looking at dates. I'm looking at what exactly is here. Because a lot of products have problems in refrigeration. Looking at cooked chicken product and raw chicken product. Raw meats, cheeses, vegetables, mixes, milk, expired milk, to see that indeed it is ready for return and has been stored separately. When I quickly look at dry storage areas, what I'm looking at is that the spaces are indeed clean, neat, and tidy. I'm also looking at whether or not we have things that are stored up above that are closer than 18 inches to a ceiling, because that little nozzle up there allows the water, in case of fire, to spread that water out and extinguish the flames. So we want to make sure that we let that work should there be an emergency situation. From a risk standpoint, we have to remember that we want to store light items from 1 to 15 pounds on the top shelf, medium weight items from 5 to 20 pounds on the next shelf, heavy items from 10 to 30 pounds on the shelf at about waist high, and the large items 15 to 50 pounds on the bottom shelf to allow us to pull those onto a cart and not strain our backs. You know, we're in a closed kitchen and we've not hit a lot of spaces: ware washing, pot washing, employee practices, actual food being prepared to see if there's contamination. But we have to also look at things that are maybe not our responsibility. We have to look and see that fire systems and extinguishers are up to date and well maintained. We have to look and see that employees can be immediately treated if there is a burn or a cut. So follow me. Let's go into some more in-depth training.